In the book, you cover a lot of ground. I know that a story went viral, you talking about your experience making Basic Instinct, and you have a very revealing Woody Allen story in the book as well, which I don't know if you want to talk about here or not, but did you have a lot of...
but I do want to say, I have never had an untoward experience with Woody Allen.
Okay.
My experiences with Woody Allen were all wonderful. He was highly professional with me. He was extraordinarily encouraging to me. And I was a young woman, 19, when I started working with him. I've done 3 films with him. He's been nothing but spectacular with me. I have no experience of him being anything but terrific. I am fully aware of the documentary that's come out recently, but I have 0 of those experiences to report.
Okay. Fair enough. You know, you're brave for saying that, because in this day and age, anybody who kind of comes out, you know, against the popular opinion is sort of playing with fire a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, it's a dangerous...
I can say that while the documentary may very well be 100% true, it is not my experience. I had a super professional and a particularly wonderful experience working with him, which is why I worked with him 3 times. There are other people in the business that have not been named who I have had particularly heinous experiences with, but he isn't one of them. There are other people like Matt Lauer, who I have also worked with, who were particularly wonderful with me. And I understand he has to have problems. Never with me. He was always very, 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 very kind to me. I understand, you know, all sides of this situation. But I can say that there are people that have had lots of problems that I have worked with that have not been this way with me. But there are people in this business who, you know, I know and my friends have had similar experiences with, who have not been named, who are nightmarish. So
I was going to ask you, is it hard for you to know?
I might not be in the zone of the people they want to have these experiences with.
Is it hard for you to know that those men are still out there, I assume, making movies or in the business, who have not been kind of held to the same fire that some of these other men have been held to? How hard is it for you to not name them? Because I would be furious. And I've had stories too, nothing I'm sure in the same realm, but difficult stories, you know?
Well, to me, we don't have laws. We don't have felony and misdemeanor laws that are being prosecuted. So the point of naming them to me seems absurd, for public ridicule and to attach myself to something that goes, I don't know where. If I can't have them prosecuted, I'm not really sure of the point. I believe in the law, but I do not want to have a public publicity contest with somebody. I don't, that's not really my game. You know, I really like functioning within the law, and I like the laws to represent us fairly and squarely. And I'd like even the worst pig of a person to have their representation, because that's how I work. You know, I've gone to court with people, and I do not bring my fame and 17 lawyers to court and then use the power of my fame to win a case. I don't do that. And I have lost in court at times, even when I should have won, because I don't do that sort of thing. I don't believe in that. And even when I see someone, and I see this story about Woody, I haven't watched it yet, but, you know, I'm sure there's merit. But I also can say I have worked with him 3 times, and there's enormous merit in his artistic work. And I don't know. For example, Roman Polanski has been prosecuted endlessly, but I can say in his case, I think it's too much. I think the press went after him because of the experience and the Sharon Tate murders, and they didn't want to deal with the fact of what the whole Charles Manson scenario, and no one ever wanted to get off him. But I can say I met him when I was 19 years old, and I was in a club in Paris, and someone said that this director wanted to meet me, and they brought me over, and he asked me what my name was. And I said, Sharon, and he flipped a table of glassware over on top of me and screamed at me like a psycho and left. And he thought I was one more person doing this to him. And because he thought I did at 19, look so much like Sharon Tate. And I know that man was beside himself. And I just don't, I don't buy every story about every person.
It's tough. It's a very tough conversation in this day and age because,
it is,
I come from the school of believing the victims and everything else. I've never met either of these men, so I've never worked with them.
But we don't always know who the victim is. Al Franken is not a senator, and I frankly think that's malarkey. And I have been a victim of sexual abuse. I have been a victim of incest abuse, and in both ways. And I can say that sometimes the victim is telling the truth, and sometimes they aren't. And there really needs to be a court of law. Believe the victim. I think hear the victim is the right answer. Hear the victim, really hear the victim, and then bring it into an appropriate arena where the victim can be heard by educated professionals. Because a triggered person can seem like a victim in that moment, and they may be a victim from another time. And I understand that really fully. And they may not be a victim of the present moment. They may be a victim from another time. And we don't know until we really see educated professionals with the perhaps victim. But we have to see the accused person and the victim in an educated arena, in an arena with educated professionals, with real educated law enforcement, so that, an accused person doesn't end up being a victim, because that's not reasonable either. I mean, we look at death row people and we realize, I think it's 1 in 9 now, people on death row are innocent.
It's crazy.
We have to look at the innocent factor here. We're killing people who aren't even criminals. We're killing people who aren't criminals. So we have to really look at this as a whole, and as a real victim of this in many different ways, let me tell you, many different ways, because you don't get to be a sex symbol in Hollywood without people thinking that you're available to be taken advantage of. You can't just think that anything anyone does is something. I've had cinematographers who, were looking at a scene and they put their hand on my bum. Now, do I think of that as being sexually aggressed? Often I do not, because that cinematographer is shooting me and shooting me and shooting me in a film that is very evocative. And that guy is looking through the camera and he is trying to be me, feel me, see me, put it on film. And sometimes he's standing there and he reaches over and he just touches me on the back, on the shoulder, on the bum, as he's looking at the scene, and he's just in his art. Do I take offense to that? Honestly, I don't. I think he's trying to make contact with me, to have complete artistic empathy in his art. I don't think, you're trying to make a sexual pass at me. I don't, because I'm an artist. And we're in this artistic endeavor together. Do I think he's making a pass at me? Not in a million years. I think he's in an artistic endeavor with me, and he's trying to get in my head and in my art space and in my mind. And he's trying to get there to what I'm doing, so that when his eye is in the camera and he's looking, he's trying to actually get in the scene with me. I don't think he's trying to make a pass at me. I trust
Next
him.
time next time a man grabs my ass, I'm going to be like, can you please get out of my art space, sir?
I mean, he's not
I'm borrowing from it.
my ass.
No, you
He's
know what
not
I mean.
like,
I'm kidding. But placing
than
a
when I'm
hand
somewhere and a guy grabs me from the back and lifts me up by my vagina.
That's horrible. Oh my God. I can't even imagine the things
scenario.
you've had to kind of
I
deal
turn
with.
around and punch them in the face.
Good.
Because I know the difference between being aggressed and between my workspace, which is a very fluid, artistic environment. And sometimes we make jokes that are off color and we do all this stuff because we're like this family of artists all working together. And I understand that it's gotten really rigid now because of course, it's swung the other direction. And I understand that nobody on the set is supposed to be making sexual jokes or screaming, I can't see her tits, which has happened to me also.
Wow.
And which I do find extremely offensive.
Yeah.
But there is a difference. There's a difference.
I understand. I always say that, and I don't, listen, I always say that we're losing nuance in this day and age. I mean that just as even a comedian or, people see a headline and they jump, conclusion, finished, done. They don't look to read the details or the facts. I think this about a lot of things, not necessarily everything you brought up, but I get where you're coming from. We're coming to a very black and white part of our lives where we're not using thought as often. Yes.
And it's hard. And where we're trying to make all these rules, but we don't have any laws. We have all these rules and all this black and white and all this aggressivity and all this anger, but we don't have any law to back it up. We need law.
Can we talk about... Law. I'm going to shift the mood. We do need a law. There's no question about it. And by the way, I cannot thank you enough for opening up to me about this stuff, Sharon, genuinely.
We need felonies. We need misdemeanors. We need to know, like, if you grab me in my private areas, you're breaking the law.
Right.
Because the laws are black and white, not in my mind or your mind or this studio says this and that one thinks that, and this rule is in this business and this rule is in that other business. We need real laws. We need rape kits to be processed because that's where the real believing and not believing comes into play.
It's so complicated because sometimes those are even tampered with. I mean, there's so much to get into with this, but I hear where you're coming from. I appreciate your viewpoint on it. I think it's really interesting to hear you talk about it because I know that you've gone through so many experiences in your life that kind of play towards
evidence can be tampered with. But
of course,
if everything is sealed and done professionally, it won't be tampered with.
Well, that would be a perfect world.
Sealed, professional, handled. So, because tampered with any evidence cannot be prosecuted in a court of law.
I think in a perfect world, if a woman could go report a rape and say, look here, like the same day, get the rape kit, get the test, everything else. But it's so complicated. Women sometimes don't go in time because they can't. And there's so many layers to it. But, it's a complicated thing.